Hello, welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Corr. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Ryan McDonald. Ryan, how's it going?
Dane, man, I'm absolutely fan-dabby-dozy. How's yourself?
I'm very good, thanks, and I'm even better because this pre-season nonsense is almost behind us.
Nearly.
Almost back to real football.
Yeah, we're almost at the finishing line, thank God.
I do feel like it's been a long pre-season break. It feels like this year.
Yeah, well, aye. We're not for Mick Gannon, who's been to Portugal and Italy. He'll be absolutely gutted that it's finished.
all over the shop, I know.
Well, I did have a nice wee jaunt to Portugal as well. So
I was going to say, says the guy that was alongside him for half of his jaunts.
Yeah, I can't complain too much. But no, I know it seems to have gone on forever. But yeah, the title defence gets underway this weekend, so I look forward to it.
Well, since we last did a Celtic podcast, Celtic have completed their final pre-season games. You mentioned in Como. The final game against Al Ahly. I mean, I know obviously Celtic won it in penalties and what have you. But I think the thing that stood out most to me anyway was Shin Yamada. I thought he really caught the eye. And look, it's early days, but he definitely looks like, Rodgers described him as a club signing. But I think he looks like one that's ready right now to influence the first team.
Yeah, I mean, he looked a handful up front, didn't he? Brendan Rodgers actually said he's quicker than Dane Murray, and I think signs suggest that he actually is, which is a frightening prospect for every defence in Scotland. He was a real handful up front, really exciting. Obviously, it was great for him scoring the winning penalty as well. Dream start for him to get his Celtic career up and running. Obviously, didn't mean a great deal in the grand scheme of things, but just to score that penalty and to get Celtic over the line was a nice feeling for him. So yeah, really impressed. And yeah, it kind of, I suppose the manager already has got a bit of a dilemma up front as to who starts on Sunday against St Mirren. Because yeah, he really impressed. He was unlucky not to obviously get that goal as well. Marco Tilo just held the ball too long, and obviously Yamada was just offside, but it was a tidy finish. So yeah, really good start so far.
I thought as well, and I know we talked about him a little bit previously, and I get we've kind of done this, but Anamura again, I honestly think $250 grand for Anamura is an absolute steal. It's daylight robbery. And look, I get we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of consternation among the Celtic fans at the way the transfer window's gone, the way the summer's been handled. But look, you can't get away from those two players for less than £2 million is incredible. And I know it's early days. I know I might be getting a bit ahead of myself, but they both look like absolute steals.
Yeah, I think Celtic fans will be willing in Anamura to do well as well. He was written off even by his. Well, I'm not going to. That's maybe a bit harsh. I'm not going to say he's been written off by his own manager, but
it did feel that way. It did kind of feel that way.
He'd even unpacked his bags. Rodgers had said that he wouldn't be part of his first team plans, but he's obviously been a surprise package this pre-season, which is what pre-season is all about. Which is why the manager always wants to get players in early, to get a look at them, to get them settled in and see how they they adjust to the playing style, etc. So Anamura's really, he's been excellent. He's had 2 real tests now against Newcastle. I think he came up against Jacob Murphy against Newcastle. He threw that with flying colours, and then he was up against Riyad Mahrez, albeit Mahrez was had to hobble off injured early in the first half, but he came through it with flying colours, and yeah, I mean he could end up saving Celtic millions in the left back position. He looks like a solid option, a solid deputy to Kieran Tierney, and they really need to have a solid deputy. The only thing that I would be a bit concerned about is he's a bit lightweight. His physicality, he's not exactly a powerhouse or anything like that. But yeah, I think for £250,000, Celtic, he's not going to, Celtic are going to at least make a profit in this boy when he goes. And yeah, he looks like another good piece of business.
So, if it was in your hands, would you think that Celtic still need another left back before the window shuts?
I would see how he fares against Scottish opposition in a competitive game. So Kieran Tierney for me isn't going to be playing 90 minutes week in, week out. I think he'll come off as a sub more often than not as Brendan Rodgers manages his minutes. I think it's almost a certainty that Anamura will at least get a wee bit of game time against St Mirren. And obviously you've got the Aberdeen away, you've got the Falkirk Premier Sports Cup games. So I think then you'll have a real idea of how well suited Anamura is going to be to Scottish football. And again, if he does well and he stands up to the physicality of the Premiership team. Because I do think if you probably will be a target for Scottish opposition to obviously try and get in behind the Celtic backline. So I think if he stands up to the test there and impresses again, then I don't know. Is there any real need for Celtic to bring in another left back? I'm not sure. I think it possibly would be a gamble as you kind of progress later into the season. But yeah, first impressions, Daniel. I don't know. The guy's just been brilliant.
Aye, no, I completely agree. And the reason why I ask it is because I think if I was in Rodgers' shoes, I would look at it and go, listen, see if we've got a few million earmarked for a left back.
Yeah,
I don't know if we need it. Eh?
Yeah, and another thing is as well, he's just so elegant in the ball. He's got a really brilliant wide range of passing. You know, he can switch it from one end to the other. You could probably count on one hand the amount of misplaced passes he's had over the course of 4 or 5 games so far. So, you know, that's something that I think Brendan Rodgers wants is defenders who can play it out from defence and quickly. And I think Anamura, that's one of his strongest traits is his ability to do that. So, it's been definitely a surprise package for me this season, for a shadow of a doubt.
Aye. One defender that Celtic are in for, apparently, according to reports today, various reports, is Man City defender Jamai Simpson Pusey, who is, I think he's a centre back, isn't he? 19 years old.
Yeah.
He's made 6, I think, top flight appearances for Pep Guardiola's team. By all accounts, the reports are that Celtic want to take him on loan. What's your initial thoughts on this? Do you think this could work out well for Celtic?
Well, I do think Celtic will need an additional defender. I think Stephen Welsh he's got interest back in Belgium, where he spent the second half of last season on loan with Michelin. So I can see Stephen Welsh. I mean, I like the boy. I think he comes in for a wee bit of harsh criticism at times. Maybe because again he's Scottish. He's one of those homegrown guys. Kind of easy target for fans at times. He's had a difficult period with injuries, but when he was on loan in Belgium last season, he did quite well. So hence the fact he's got interest back there, and I think it would be for his own good if he was to move on, because he's not going to play much this season at all. And then that opens up a place in the defence. You know, at the minute you've got Cameron Carter-Vickers, you've got Liam Scales, Austin Trusty, and young Dane Murray, he's been a revelation this summer. He's been absolutely fantastic. So there's 4 solid options, but given Cameron Carter-Vickers' his injury record, I think you need a 5th central defender in there. And the fact that Celtic have already spent £6 million on Austin Trusty, obviously spent £6 million on Carter-Vickers, I don't think they're going to go out and splash out another defender when they've already got 4 solid options there. So that's why I think a loan deal could it might be a bit of business, you know. As I said, this boy's only 19. He bustled into the scene last season, 6 appearances. He had 2 in the Champions League. He made his first senior start against Sporting Lisbon. He skippered the reserves to title glory as well. He was crowned the EPL 2's Player of the Year, pipping Callum Osmond to the award. Pep Guardiola spoke in glowing terms about him as well. Said that he's the future of Man City's defence, and he actually played against Celtic in last year's USA pre-season game, which Celtic edged out 4-3 winners. So he comes with if he does arrive, he comes with a decent pedigree, a really promising and exciting prospect. And Celtic have obviously forged a really successful partnership with Man City over the years. You know, you look at Samaras, Guidetti, Denayer, Boyata, Roberts. I don't think there's been one failure that's arrived from the Etihad, so that's promising as well. The only issue for me is I think, should Celtic really be developing players from other clubs when they're not going to have an option to buy? I mean, it's something that's very unlikely going to have an option to buy this boy, considering what Pep Guardiola said about him already. So that's
exactly what I was going to ask you.
That's the only issue for me. I'm not so sure. I think there was a time in place when Celtic were maybe under like kind of Ronnie Dyler. They're in a bit of a malaise, if you like, as a club. Rangers are out of the league, and they could afford to just kind of cruise by. But I think, that's my only issue. I think if you're going to be developing other players, you really need to be looking at an option to buy, and I'm not sure this deal would have that.
Because I get that some Celtic fans will say, you mentioned the Ronnie Dyler era, you know, someone like Denayer. We didn't have an option to buy it. He came for 2 seasons, didn't he? He ended up coming back.
No, he was there for a year, only a year.
Was it a year? Sorry. I don't know who I'm thinking of. But anyway, Denier came. He was really good.
Remember he forged that partnership with Virgil van Dijk?
He was Young Player of the Year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was excellent.
So some Celtic fans go, look, this boy's a good player, get him in. But I tend to more think along the lines of what you mentioned there about developing other teams' players. When, shouldn't Celtic be developing a Dane Murray?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I do think there will be a place for Dane Murray this season. I think he's 22 years old. Brendan Rodgers has already spoken really highly of him. He's said publicly that, I think he said last season that, you remember the time when Mike Naroki was brought in from the cold and thrown in against Rangers due to that injury crisis. I think Celtic lost 3-2 at Parkhead. Rodgers actually said that Dane Murray was in line to start that game, only for him to suffer an injury and he had to undergo a minor knee up at the end of that season, which got him fit and ready for this pre-season. So he's been excellent. Dane Murray really has. He's 22 years old now. He's not a young lad, and this is probably going to be time for him to make the breakthrough. So I do think there'll be a place for him, but as I say, I think Celtic just needs strength and depth. Given Carter Vickers' injury record, I think Austin Trusty had a couple of niggles last season as well. Obviously, Liam Scales suffered that kind of fractured cheekbone, so you do need strength and depth in that area, and I think that's what this boy will bring. I
think that's a fair point. I think that it probably is an argument you could say that there's room to develop Murray and bring in a lone player as well. So I agree.
And Celtic obviously competing across 4 competitions as well. So the League Cup, for example, against Falkirk. I mean, I've got to be honest, Dan, we'll probably talk about this later in the podcast, but I can actually see Dane Murray starting against St Mirren this weekend, but we can maybe talk about that later.
Interesting, we will definitely come to that. While we're on transfers, though, another name that's been doing the rounds in the last few days is Danish winger Jacob Broom, who's Go Ahead Eagles, isn't he?
Yeah, Go Ahead Eagles, yeah.
According to reports, there's been 3 or 4 Celtic bids. I have to say, low ball bids, it seems, have been put in and swiftly rejected. I mean, obviously, neither of us are experts on Danish or Dutch football, so we haven't seen them much. But generally, Ryan, what is going on with the transfer window? What is happening?
Yeah, it's been a frustrating window for Celtic, shall we say, especially in the last couple of weeks. It's been fairly quiet. Obviously, there's negotiations going on in the background. Jacob Broom's one of the ones that we're talking about just now. But yeah, it's a bit. I don't buy into like people freaking out over signings, and I do feel as if Celtic have still got there's 5 weeks until the transfer window closes. Yeah. The point I was making the other week is that there is a looming deadline of, I think it's Thursday, August the 14th, for the Champions League squad to be registered. Now Celtic need to get players in for that for that registration period. And I think at the bare minimum, you need to have another winger in there, because Celtic just simply cannot rely upon a 34-year-old James Forrest, who's been excellent in pre-season, by the way. He's been absolutely brilliant. Daisen Maeda, and then a backup of Marco Tilio and Yang, who actually Brendan Rodgers has described as one of his first team starters. That just, that's a kind of alarming prospect. And I understand why fans are getting a bit agitated, but I do think that what is going on behind the scenes, and Celtic will have reinforcements in by then. The only concern would be that they need to hit the ground running. They're in for the most lucrative game of the season, the biggest game of Celtic season, essentially, is this two-legged playoff that's coming up. It's worth £40 million to the club. So there's no bigger game than this one coming up in August. So I think the Celtic board, they come in for pelters, yes. They're accused of penny pinching, etc., etc. It seems to be a recurring theme that they leave things late in the transfer window before getting deals over the line. But they have spent money, they have spent big in recent years, despite what people might say. And I do think they will spend big again this season, but they do need to get players in quickly. And if that means pushing the boat out for another winger, then they'll need to do it. Before that Champions League registration deadline, that's for sure.
I feel like it's the same movie we're watching over and over again. I feel like other clubs seem to get it done really quickly, and you're spot on when you say that obviously this game, whoever it's against, this two-legged playoff, is the most important game of the season. So why not prepare like it's the most? Why not get the players in. And you mentioned Yang there. I don't know if you share this opinion, but I thought when Rodgers said that in Como, he said, he got asked, is Yang going to Norwich City? And he said, well, not at the minute. He's a starting player for me. And I almost thought that was a bit of a veiled message. Yeah. Like, I'm having to say Yang's now a starter.
Yeah, I mean, Yang's come on leaps and bounds this time last year. It really has, and I think that's actually down to Brendan Rodgers. But yeah, the fact that he's now considered as an automatic first team starter, I think you're right, Dan. I think that was maybe a thinly veiled kind of message to the board that get me signings in, get them in now. He's a great impact player from the bench, but Celtic needs somebody that can come in and they can hang their hat on for these 2 games, and that's what I mean. Although I'm kind of relaxed about the situation at the minute, I do feel that if they're going to have, even if there's one player to come in, it's got to be a winger. It's absolutely got to be a winger. That's got to be the priority, because you can't. All it takes is an injury to James Forrest or an injury to Yang, and then you're left with Marco Tilio outright. And I'm sorry, that lad's just not it at all.
That's what I was going to say. With no harm, no harm to him, but he's not a Celtic player.
Yeah, it's absolutely no harm to him at all. He's he seems like a nice lad. He's obviously doing his best out there. He's had his chance over pre-season. He's looked okay in flashes, but yeah, he's not going to be Celtic's answer going forward. And I think obviously once they finally get a winger over the line, then Tilo will be allowed to move to Rapid Vienna. So he's deemed surplus to requirements, and all it takes is one injury for him to be starting that Champions League playoff, and that just can't be allowed. So, yep, there's work to be done. I understand why Celtic fans are getting frustrated. There might be a banner or two on Sunday when the league flags are unfurled. A couple of messages to the board, but I think come that deadline on Thursday, August the 14th, they will have at least one winger in. So,
if we mention, just to quickly round off on the transfer talk, we mentioned Anamura could fill the left back slot. Yes. Simpson Pusey could be the defender. I agree with you wholeheartedly. They need a winger yesterday. Are there any other positions that you think badly need filled? I mean, a lot of people talking about a striker, perhaps, even 2 wingers, maybe.
2 wingers for me. 2 wingers, definitely.
2 wingers.
I think I can see Celtic spending kind of big on a winger and then having another, maybe bring someone else on loan, because obviously Jota's injured until early 2026. I don't know if you're going to see the best of Jota this season, so it might be a stopgap signing for Jota. But they definitely need at least one winger. I would argue too, and a striker. I think they need a goal scorer. It remains to be seen if Shin Yamada is going to be the man that fills Kyogo's boots, but I think they need an out goal scorer. So if Yamada does that in early games, then there might not be as much urgency to get another kind of front man in. But in a minute, I would definitely say for me, you're looking at another centre back. I still think you need a central midfielder in there, a defensive midfielder, like I've said it before, a powerhouse like Victor Wanyama, who can play against Europe's elite. 2 wingers and a striker. That's I think that would be my shopping list if I was Brendan Rodgers.
I meant to say to you that someone on social media a couple of weeks ago when we had this similar chat, and we both said, "Oh, you need a Wanyama type." Someone replied saying, "If you need a Wanyama type, sign Wanyama." It's a fair point. He's still out there.
He's still unattached, but judging by his performances with Dunfermline last season,
maybe that ship sailed.
Yeah, I think maybe that ship sailed about 5-6 years ago.
Realistically, though, right? So, what did you list there? 4 or 5 positions, right? Yeah. 5 positions. Do you think Celtic will get all that done?
Yeah,
are you confident they will? Yeah.
There's money in the bank of Parkhead, as fans like to call it. There's money there to be spent. £17 million from Kuhn. Obviously, the windfall they got from Jeremy Frimpong.
Oh, there's plenty of money now.
Obviously, Mike Rockies went out on loan. They've saved wages in hand. I think there's been something to it, like including B team players. I think there's been like 17 exits this summer, which is staggering.
Nice.
And I think there's only been 6 or 7 incomings. So, and for me, the only incomings that are really first team ready are possibly Anamura, but definitely Kieran Tierney and Ben Nygren. Otherwise, the other lads, Shin Yamada as well, I would say, sorry. But But otherwise, likes of Callum Osman, I don't see him featuring at all this season really. But yeah, there's definitely work to be done.
Rough arithmetic, but I reckon for every £1 million Celtic have spent this summer, they've brought in £8 million.
Yeah,
so it's right. Like the money's there. And look, I hope you're right. I hope you're right, and I am maybe a bit more worried than you, a bit less relaxed, but I'm still reasonably relaxed. It's 5 weeks. I think Celtic will get the majority of their business done. But I don't know. I just think the league starts this week, and I don't think many people would argue when you say Celtic are weaker than they were at the last season.
No, definitely. Even in January, Dan, because you had Kyogo. Before Kyogo left, you had Kyogo, you had Nicholas Kuhn, and now you don't. So
exactly.
Kieran Tierney's a big upgrade, but I still think Greg Taylor's a loss. He was a kind of specialist in that inverted fullback position, but obviously Kieran Tierney's a massive upgrade there. But in terms of attacking areas, they've lost some amount of goals, and they've not found replacements yet. So yeah, they really need to get the ball rolling quickly.
So that brings us to this weekend's game then. Celtic kick off their title defence against St Mirren. It's on Sunday, isn't it?
Yes.
Sunday. We were talking off air before we come on about who might start the game. I know you've got an idea of your starting 11. So let's hear it. How do you think we'll shape up?
Right, I'm going to say a starting 11, but it's going to come with a caveat. So I think with all the players Celtic have at disposal at the minute, this for me is their strongest 11. So I would go with Schmeichel in goals, a back four of Johnston, Carter Vickers, Trusty and Tierney, a midfield three of McGregor, Hatate and Nygren, and then despite what Brendan Rodgers says about Yang, I would still go with James Forrest on the right, Yamada through the middle, and Maeda on the left. Now, the caveat is I don't think Cameron Carter-Vickers is going to start on Sunday. I've just got a feeling that it might come too soon for him. Yeah, he looked sharper on Sunday against Al Ahly, but I think Dane Murray might just get the nod for this one, alongside Austin Trusty, who's been absolutely awesome this pre-season as well. That's probably and then you've got, I suppose, you've got the dilemma up front with Yamada and Engles and even Kenny fighting for that number 9 jersey. So there's a few. I'd say I think Carter Vickers is going to be fit enough. I think does Engles fit in that midfield? The over pre-season, McGregor, Hatate, Nygren seems to be they've worked really well. They've clicked right away. And then obviously Yamada, he's just in the door as well, but he's obviously impressed in his 45-minute cameo the other night. So there's a few questions, there's a few positions up for grabs, I would say.
The Engles one is interesting because I'm repeating myself now, but for everyone that didn't hear us before we come on here, I said to you that I really like Engles. I think the stick he's taken over the last few months is way overstated. I think he was a perfectly good player for Celtic last season, and I think he's got a really high ceiling. I think it's going to be a big season for him. But then I think you're spot on when you say, well, where does he get in? Because Hatate and McGregor play, and Nygren has looked brilliant in this summer. I think he's looked another absolute steal.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm Rodgers, I would go, they probably are the starting three at the weekend.
Yeah.
Don't really see how you could get Engles in there.
I mean, it's incredible to think £11 million player could be on the bench in the Scottish Premiership, isn't it?
I know.
But that's the competition that Celtic need and want. I think Engles, for me, again, he was fine last season. He's definitely, people describe him as a big money flop. No chance. No chance. No. He was. I think he especially in Europe, I think he gave Celtic a kind of power and a presence. Domestically, I felt he's maybe a bit too slow on the ball at times, but I think him, Austin Trusty, and even Adam Ida, he scored 2 get away at Aston Villa. I think they helped Celtic massively in Europe last season, and that's ultimately these guys are going to be judged. And yeah, there's just competition in midfield. There's McGregor, Hatate, and Nygren. If it is those three who start on Sunday, that's not going to be the midfield for the rest of the season. So there'll be injuries. There'll be issues with form. There's all sorts of kind of reasons why the midfield will be changing. I think Engles will have a big part to play. I think this is the season where he will come into his own and really justify that £11 million. He's a nice lad as well. He's settled in Celtic Park as well. So he'll feel as if he's got a point to prove. And £11 million, I can't see him staying on the bench for most of the season. But I think certainly for the big kick-off on Sunday, I think that's a midfield three to go with. What's your thoughts on the defence, Dan? Do you think what do you think of Austin Trusty over the summer?
I can't remember if it was the pod I was on with yourself, but I think Austin Trusty's going to have a big season as well. Look, I think it was actually with yourself, but anyway, I think Austin Trusty last season came across a bit underwhelming because, particularly at places like, St Johnstone, Dundee, he had the look of a guy that was a bit like, whoa, what is going on here? What am I doing here with Simon Murray ragdolling me in the corner? It was, as you mentioned, in the Champions League, places like Atalanta, where he was outstanding. Yeah. Aston Villa played really well. I think the bigger the game, the better he performs. And it's very early days, but in this pre-season, I kind of feel like the penny's dropped with him a little bit. I think he kind of knows, or he kind of realises, well, I need to be like that every game at a team like Celtic. And look, a lot of fans would say, oh, we needed a centre-half this summer. I don't think they do it. I think Trusty could still be that centre-half. And I think going forward, him and Carter Vickers, I'm confident will put together a really strong partnership. As you say, there'll be injuries and what have you, and I'm sure of that. But no, I'm confident he'll have a big year as well.
Yeah, he was excellent against Newcastle. I think that was probably his best display of pre-season. But just overall, he's been so consistent. And I had the chance to speak to him in Portugal, in Lisbon, and he was convinced that he had a good season last year. So he
wasn't bad, to be fair. He wasn't like he was awful.
I think what he struggled with, Dan, was consistency. I think that's the main thing. I think it took him a while to adjust to the robust nature of Scottish football, and like you say, been ragdolled by Simon Murray. So he's had a year to settle in, and he's a USA international. He's on the books of Arsenal. He's got Premier League experience with Sheffield United, so he's a good player. I think he's only 26, 27 as well, so his best years are still ahead of him. He's got all the attributes you need to be a Celtic player. He's got the pace, he's got the power, he's got the height. And I think this season could be the making of him. I really do. And if
I completely agree.
If he can basically bring those Champions League performances to the domestic scene, and I think Celtic are on to a winner, because Cameron Carter-Vickers is obviously the nailed down first choice at centre back. He's a man mountain. For me, he's the best centre back Celtic have had since Virgil van Dijk. So
I must be.
You look at that back. You look at the back four or back five. You've got Schmeichel, Johnson, Carter-Vickers, Trusty, Tierney. That is a Champions League-esque back five.
It's a strong back five.
Yeah, definitely.
What about up top though? Because I think that's an area that will cause a bit of debate, not just for this weekend, but going forward. To play devil's advocate, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Shin Yamada was great the other night. I said he was great. And look, if I was Celtic manager, I'd be tempted to start him. But I think it will be Adam Idah at the weekend.
Yeah, I think Adam Idah will probably start, despite me saying Yamada's would form part of Celtic's strongest 11. I think Adam Idah will be given the nod. I sense that Brendan Rodgers is a bit frustrated with Adam Idah. He's got all the tools, but he's just, I don't know, he's just a dead frustrating figure to watch. It just feels as if he's got so much more to give.
Aye.
I think 20 goals last season was great. It was good for his first full season at Celtic Park. He scored some big ones. I know he scored at Ibrox. He scored obviously 2 at Aston Villa. So he is a big game player, and obviously we know he scored in the Scottish Cup final the year before. So he has shown that he's got the potential to be a really good Celtic striker, but it's just he's a bit of an enigma, and it's frustrating to watch at times. You just watch him in pre-season and he passes up some easy chances. I feel as if his hold-up play, it should be so much better. He's got the physical presence to be a real kind of target man up front, but it's just very hit and miss at times. So again, he's another one with a point to prove, and it's too early to write him off. And I think the vast majority of people would agree Celtic have overpaid for the lad. But that's not his fault. That's not his fault. That's just what happens when when transfer negotiations drag out like they did. So that's not his fault. He's a good guy. to speak to. He's again, I don't think he's short of confidence, so he'll be another one that will feel that this is going to be my season to nail down the number 9 jersey. And if the Celtic do close the window with just Anamura, Yamada, and Johnny Kenny is there's only kind of real options up front. Plus, obviously, you've got Daiza Maeda. Then he will be relied upon, and this is the season where he's going to be judged. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens, but hopefully, like Trusty, he can show a wee bit of consistency and really kickstart his Celtic career.
It's weird with Adamida because, and I'm sure this is not the case, I'm not suggesting this is, but it feels like he's not bothered at times. You know, you just get that kind of languid body language, and like you say, you're just wanting so much more from him. You want him to come off the pitch exhausted, having, absolutely worked his defender tirelessly. But it is frustrating. Look, and he's only 24 though, so still quite young. You would like to think that Rodgers, who's got a track record of developing players, will have, kind of taken him under his wing this summer.
I mean, Rodgers really fancies him, and that's why that's why he kind of sanctioned that deal.
Aye.
So, yeah, as I say, this is the season's going to be judged, but he's got so much more to. I feel as if he's got so much more to give, and with increased competition, then he's got two options here. He pushes himself or he's out the door. That's what's essentially what's going to happen. But as I say, 20 goals is not to be sniffed at, and you need to remember most of his appearances last season were from the bench. So his goal conversion rate was pretty decent. And if he gets a run of games, maybe starts to find his feet, starts to find consistency, then who knows? He might even be a 30-goal striker.
And before we wrap up then, Ryan, what's your prediction for Sunday's game?
Flag day. You'd expect Celtic to get off to a win in front of a bumper crowd. There'll be 60,000 fans there. It'll be a full house. Obviously, St Mirren snatched a point. Well, snatched isn't probably the right word. They earned a point on Trophy Day last year in the final game.
Good team, St Mirren, really good team.
And they're a well-drilled outfit. I think the work that Stephen Robinson's doing there is absolutely incredible. I call him a miracle worker, especially with some of the issues he had to deal with last season. To get them into the top 6 was a phenomenal achievement. So, I mean, it's not going to be a walkover. St Mirren will be well drilled. They've always performed pretty well against Celtic and Rangers. So I think Celtic will win, but obviously I don't think it's going to be a 4 or 5-0 rollover. I think it'll be a close one. I'll say 2-0.
I think 3-1 and Negren to get a home debut goal.
Yeah.
There you go. Take that to the bookies, and if you do, don't come back to me for the money because
please gamble responsibly.
You probably won't be winning. Please gamble responsibly, exactly. Ryan, I think that brings us to the end of this week's Record Celtic podcast. Thank you very much for everyone watching at home and listening at home as well. And I guess we'll check back in with everyone next week.
Brilliant.
Ryan,
enjoyed that. Thanks very much, Dan.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
And thanks for listening at home. Cheers.